Hello viewers, and welcome to the fourth episode of Our Spiritual Heritage. And in this episode I'll be looking at not one book but two books by way of a comparison. And just to kind of give you some explanation of what I'm doing here, what the aim of this episode is, I was thinking just earlier today about the presidents of the Watchtower Society. So Charles H. Russell, Joseph Rutherford, Nathan Knorr. And I think I'm really interested in at the moment, because I'm doing research for my book, I'm really interested in the transitions between presidents. So how did it feel to go from Russell to Rutherford? What kind of changeover process was there? And the same question with going from Rutherford to Knorr, what was the changeover process? And I was looking at my collection, which you'll see behind me is growing, because thankfully a lot of you kind dear viewers are sending me, parcel after parcel of these fascinating books, which are really helping me with my research. But I was looking at my books, and I noticed I had a 1943 yearbook, and I thought, well, 1943. The 1943 yearbook should mention the changeover between Rutherford and Knorr, because Rutherford died in 1942 and the 1943 yearbook would have been written in 1942. So I thought, fantastic, let's see what it says. And I was absolutely amazed by what it said. It presented an image of the organisation that is almost unrecognisable from what we have today, and it has to do with the role of the governing body versus the role of president, or the way the organisation used to be run under a president. Now, to give you a little bit of background to this, I've already done a video about the governing body and how long has there been a governing body, and in that video I used a clip from, or I encouraged viewers to look at a video called, what was it called? The New World Society in Action, or something like that. It was a video, the first ever film of the Watchtower Society, filmed in 1953, and it basically takes you on a tour of the society, and nowhere does it mention the words governing body. Instead, it takes you straight up to the office of the president, Nathan Knorr, and just works from there. So, watching that film completely demolishes the idea that there has always been a governing body, because it's dealing very intimately with the Watchtower Society, and not once is the governing body mentioned. So that's interesting, but I'm apart from that film, I feel kind of frustrated in a way that there isn't more. Until today, that is, I've felt frustrated that there aren't more tangible quotes from the literature to explain how highly thought of the president was. And obviously now that I've got this old literature, I'm starting to stumble on them. But to give you a little bit of background, I want to read to you from Crisis of Conscience, which now that I'm writing a book myself, I'm starting to realise what a good book this is, and I'm finding myself going back to it more, because obviously when I first woke up I whistled through it. It was a real page turner for me, and a lot of the information just kind of swept over me. But now I'm having to go back and reread it almost, just to kind of really get the flavour of the organisation's history. And on pages 56, 57 and 58, Fred Franz talks about the governing body and the role it played in the early 1970s. He says, the governing body at that time was in reality both a judicial court, and also, because its decisions and definitions had force of law for all Jehovah's Witnesses, a legislative body. It was a governing body in the sense that the Sanhedrin of Bible times might be called such, its functions being similar. Just as all major questions involving Jehovah's named people of that period were brought to the Sanhedrin in Jerusalem for settlement, so with the governing body of Jehovah's Witnesses in Brooklyn. But it was not an administrative body in any sense of the word. The administrative authority and responsibility rested exclusively with the corporation president, Nathan H. Knorr. I had not expected this, because the same year of my appointment to the governing body, Vice President Franz had given a speech later carried in the December 15, 1971 Watchtower, in which he described the role of the governing body, contrasting this with that of the corporation, the Watchtower Bible and Tract Society. The Vice President's language was unusually bold and frank, as he stated again and again that the corporation was simply an agency, a temporary instrument used by the governing body. And it gives the reference for, if you want to look up the December 15, 1971 Watchtower, it's pages 754 and 760. And the reason why the relationship between the governing body and the society back then was interesting was because it was obviously the society that the president was president of. So what relationship did the society have with the governing body? Because whatever relationship that was should also have an impact on the powers of the president of the society, if that makes sense. Anyway, I'll read you a little bit of what Franz said in his talk. He said, hence the Society's voting members do not desire that there be any basis for conflict and division. They do not want to cause anything like a situation where the administrative agency controls and directs the user of that agency, which user is the governing body as representing the faithful and discreet slave class. No more so than to have the tail wag a dog instead of the dog's wagging its tail. A legal religious instrument, according to Caesar's law, should not attempt to direct and control its creator. Rather, the creator of the legal religious instrument should control and direct it. And then Ray Franz says, because of the simile used, the talk was spoken of by some as the tail wagging the dog talk. Unquestionably, it contained powerful expressions. The problem was that they presented a picture that was completely contrary to the fact this was in 1971. The governing body did not control the corporation, not at the time that the aforementioned talk was given by the Vice President, nor at the time the material was published, nor for some 4 years thereafter. The picture presented eventually did come to be true, but only as the result of a very drastic adjustment, one unpleasantly fraught with heated emotions and considerable division. Strange as it may seem to most Jehovah's Witnesses today, the kind of governing body described in that talk had never existed in the whole history of the organization. It took over 90 years for it to come into being, and its present existence dates only from January 1st, 1976, or about 1/5 of the organization's history. I will explain why I make such a statement and why it is factual. So hopefully that gives a little bit of background. Ray Franz is saying that in 1971 his uncle, Fred Franz, gave a talk at the annual meeting in which he said the governing body should control the Watchtower Society. The Watchtower Society shouldn't control the governing body. But the problem with saying that was that the Watchtower Society had a president, and if the governing body controlled the Watchtower Society, then the governing body should also be controlling the president and not the other way round, which is the way it was at the start of the 70s. And it took a huge amount of disruption and disagreement to get to the stage where the office of president became meaningless. And Ray Franz documents that transition very, very well in his book, Crisis of Conscience, which I would recommend to everybody watching this video. Anyway, this leaves the question, are those claims true? Are the claims made by Ray Franz that there was never a governing body, that there was never a situation where the governing body controlled the Watchtower Society and its president, or were those claims just made up by a bitter former governing body member? Well, as I say, I've been trying to find good quotes to show what power the president, I mean, it's fairly obvious to anyone with a rudimentary knowledge of Watchtower history that the office of president, as held by people like Charles Taze Russell and Joseph Rutherford, was significant, far more significant than it is now. But what I'm interested in are actual, tangible quotes that give some idea of the religious significance of this office. And I hit the gold mine today when I looked at the 1943 Yearbook of Jehovah's Witnesses, which, as I say, was written in the aftermath of Rutherford's death. And just to prove this is a Watchtower publication, I'll show you. There we go. So it's a genuine Watchtower publication. And I'm going to read to you, if I may, from page 225 to page 227. It's quite a long section I'm going to read to you, but please bear with me because it's worth it. Okay, so page 225. Report of meetings of the associations. On January 13, 1942, a special meeting was called of the Board of Directors of the Watchtower Bible and Tract Society, Pennsylvania Corporation, and the Board of Directors of the Watchtower Bible and Tract Society, Incorporated, New York Corporation. A joint meeting was held at Brooklyn, New York, for the election of a president. The boards of directors were notified of the passing of Brother J. F. Rutherford as president, January 8, 1942, and the purpose of this meeting was to fill this vacancy. The joint boards unanimously elected Nathan H. Knorr as president of both corporations. This caused a vacancy in the office of vice president, whereupon Hayden C. Covington was unanimously elected as vice president of the two corporations. On Tuesday, January 27, 1942, a meeting of the Council of the International Bible Students Association, British Corporation, was called. The Board of Directors was informed that J. F. Rutherford died on the 8th at San Diego, California. From the minutes of this meeting of the Board of Directors held in London, England, the following is taken. Resolved that this meeting of the Board of Directors of the International Bible Students Association conforms to that of the Board of Directors of the Watchtower Bible and Tract Society in Brooklyn, and that Brother Nathan H. Knorr be and is hereby elected President of the International Bible Students Association and a member of the Council. This resolution was confirmed by all the directors. On October 1st, 1942, the annual meeting of the Watchtower Bible and Tract Society was held in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. I found that interesting, by the way, that they had their annual meetings in Pennsylvania. So, because obviously nowadays they have them in Jersey City Assembly Hall, don't they? But back then it seems they would go to Pennsylvania to have their annual meeting. It says the regular order of business was transacted. The officers present at this meeting were the President, the Vice President, and the Secretary-Treasurer. At the close of the business meeting, the following declaration was offered and unanimously accepted, and request was made that publication of this declaration be made in the 1943 Yearbook of Jehovah's Witnesses, along with the President's report on the Society. The declaration is herewith set out, and I'm now going to read you the declaration, and just to show you, because I'm going to try and upload this in HD so that you can double check this to make sure I'm not misleading you. I'm just going to give you a quick look at the pages I'll be reading. So this is fascinating stuff. At the annual meeting of the Watchtower Bible and Tract Society, the Pennsylvania Corporation, on October 1st, 1942, held in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, pursuant to the charter and the bylaws of the corporation, a motion was made and seconded, and on submission was unanimously voted by all present, to wit, that a declaration be recorded in the minutes of the corporation and published in the annual report to this effect as follows. the members of the Watchtower Bible and Tract Society, duly assembled as legal representatives of our brethren throughout the world, declare: 1. That the Watchtower Bible and Tract Society is the servant to the earthly part of Jehovah's capital organisation on earth, whether legally recognised according to the laws of any land or not. 2. That since the laws of the state of Pennsylvania require that the corporation have officers and directors the same as any other corporation, it is recognised that vacancies in any office must be filled in the manner required by law. 3. That Jehovah God and his Son Christ Jesus are the leaders and invisible directors of the Watchtower Bible and Tract Society, and that Jehovah through his Son places his servants in the earthly part of his organisation, as well as in the invisible heavenly part thereof, as it pleases him, the great theocrat. 4. That for more than 60 years Jehovah has used faithful men C.T. Russell and J.F. Rutherford as his servants to fill the office of President, the chief executive office of the Society, to oversee the affairs of the earthly part of Jehovah's organisation under direction from the Lord. 5. All faithful servants of the Lord have recognised that the theocracy of which the Watchtower Bible and Tract Society is a servant operates from the top down and not from the bottom up, as in the worldly governments, and therefore that instructions come to the Lord's people on earth from the office of President of the Watchtower Bible and Tract Society, filled by anointed men chosen of the Lord in his organisation. 6. We recognise before the Lord that Brother N.H. Knorr is his chosen servant to fill the office of President, vacated by the passing on of Brother J.F. Rutherford to a higher office and field of service in Jehovah's organisation, and that with this change in personnel in office, the organisation has not changed one bit, but that it has continued forward with greater speed and increase than ever before known in the history of God's earthly organisation. I'm actually going to cut off there because it gets really boring. Yeah, I've read, I'll just read you the last part. Point 7, we declare to all our brethren throughout the earth that we are 100% wholeheartedly and joyfully behind the present President in every step that he takes in attempting to carry out the privileges and great responsibilities of his office in an effort to serve Jehovah, and we rejoice in the privilege of continuing to march with him clear through the glorious portals of the new world to complete victory in this great fight for the theocracy. We pray the continued increase of the Lord's rich blessing upon the office of the President of the Society and upon all the brethren at Bethel and elsewhere throughout the earth who are holding high the banner of truth in the battle against demonism. And that's the declaration. And you'll see that after the declaration you have a blank page, and then it pretty much begins with the daily text. Sorry. So that's the end, basically, of the report for the 1943 yearbook. And wow, I couldn't. If you asked me to write a list of damning things for it to say about the significance of the office of president and how there was no such thing as a governing body, I couldn't come up with much more conclusive stuff than that. The terminology used there completely negates any concept of there being a governing body and places everything, all of the power and all of the authority and all of the control squarely on the shoulders of whoever happens to be the president of the Watchtower Society. No mention of a governing body. Contrast that with the 1978 yearbook, and the reason why I've got this is because Nathan Knorr, who we've just read of as being God's servant, whose position as president was chosen by God, Nathan H. Knorr died in 1977, and in the same year this was written, the 1978 Yearbook of Jehovah's Witnesses. And the amazing thing is, I've just read to you like a 3-page declaration about the changeover from Rutherford to Knorr. Well, this is the corresponding page in the 1978 yearbook, and you'll see on one side it says corporate societies, and on the other side it says governing body, the governing body. All it says about Knorr is, after a long faithful life of service as one of Jehovah's Witnesses, having been baptized in 1923, Brother Nathan H. Knorr finished his earthly course on June 8th, 1977. He had succeeded Brother Rutherford as president of the Watchtower Bible and Tract Society in 1942 and served faithfully and well. He became a member of the Bethel family in September 1923. Brother Knorr felt a deep responsibility for pressing the expansion of the preaching and teaching work worldwide and had a great love for the missionaries scattered throughout the countries of the world. While he is missed by all who recognized his love of theocratic service, they rejoice in the words at Revelation 14:13, "Happy are the dead who die in union with the Lord from this time onward. Yes, says the Spirit, let them rest from their labours, for the things they did go right with them." On June 22nd, 1977, Brother Frederick W. Franz, Vice President, was elected to serve as President of the Watchtower Bible and Tract Society of Pennsylvania. The various corporate religious societies associated with the principal one, Watchtower Bible and Tract Society of Pennsylvania, that have been formed by Jehovah's Witnesses throughout the earth in compliance with the laws of various governments, cooperate with the governing body in carrying on the evangelizing work commanded by Jesus. And I don't think I need to read you the next page about the governing body, because I think you can look up this yearbook on your own Watchtower library if you have it. But it basically, explains how there were some vacancies. They felt they needed to fill vacancies, so some governing body members died, including Nathan Knorr, and they had 3 vacancies, so they voted in Kerry Barber, John E. Barr and Martin Potzinger, and it says there are now 18 members of the governing body. So they kind of viewed it as, we need to have 18, and if people die we need to bring in more people. Where they got 18 from as a number, I have no idea, but that was the organisation in 1977 compared to 1942, and the difference between the two organisations, in my view, couldn't be clearer. That is unquestionably the most damning material in the 1943 yearbook that I've ever read regarding how significant the office of president was to the organisation. And by the time you get to the 1978 yearbook, you see that actually the office of president isn't really such a big deal, because it no longer really has any power, because we've decided that the president is president of a society that is effectively the tail, and the dog needs to wag the tail, not the tail wag the dog, and the dog is of course the governing body. So yeah, very interesting stuff, and it's nice to, not that I doubted Ray Franz at all, but it was nice to kind of find something in black and white that absolutely backed up what he'd said about the organisation. Anyway, I'm sorry if I've read loads of stuff there that you probably didn't want to have read, because it's all indoctrination and what have you, but I just found that fascinating and I felt I needed to share it. I hope you're all doing well, and thank you so much for watching.